Welcome everybody. This is a WBAI Town Hall Candidates Forum. The date is September 15th, 2024. This is a candidates forum for candidates throughout the network who are running for the local station boards of in the Pacifica Foundation. So I want to verify who we have in attendance as a candidate who is capable of communicating. Let me read some names, and I'm going to read them off in the order that I think people appeared. So, all right. Joan DiLorenzo has just shown up. Okay. So please, I'm going to read the names of candidates. If you are a candidate and you're here and I don't read your name, please identify yourself. I'll say that again for anyone who's just joining. If you are a candidate and you're here and I don't read you in this list, please identify yourself so that I know you're here. So Jim Dingman, Tom Murata. We were not able to confirm that Tom Murata, although showing up here, is communicating with us. Tom, are you communicating with us at this time? All right, so James Sagerton, Jack DePalma, John Brinkley. So are there any candidates who are here and able to participate whose names I did not read? So thank you. We don't have much time constraints because we have a lot of candidates. Hang on a second. Virginia Browning has entered the room. So don't know if Virginia Browning is a candidate or not. So we'll be taking questions.
Not.
We'll be taking questions from people who are attending who are not candidates. We'll do that in a little while. First off, okay, so we'll take questions. Let's keep the questions down to 1 minute timing. And Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman, you volunteered as a timekeeper, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so we'd like our questions to be 1 minute or less, and the responses from the candidates can be up to 2 minutes. Sometimes less is more, but do you want to say that the views expressed here are those of the candidates, not of the radio station or the Pacific Foundation, and the sponsorship of this debate is not an endorsement of any of the candidates. So, now, as a first question, hang on a second. The Pacifica Foundation bylaws establish local station boards, locally elected and accountable to the station listeners, ensuring local flavor and what the local listeners want. In that context, what do you think about the possibility of developing national Pacifica shows to be played across the network to possibly foster a national Pacifica network brand? Jack DePalma, you go first. Jack DePalma, you have 2 minutes, and we don't hear you yet.
The food is ready, Michael. I was going to eat and listen to other people, but I'll say these three things. You're absolutely right. National programming is essential for Pacifica's survival because we have 5 stations and we underutilize them.
They're on the board.
Excuse me. I'm going to mute. If you're not.
I'll continue, Michael. She quieted down. Number two, we do have national programming. Sometimes it's called Democracy Now!, but it's not under our control anymore. Spun off, and basically, I'm sure the people in A like Democracy Now! I'm sure the people in DC where it was hatched with BAI. And I believe that many times we lead the network. I don't know if they all play Richard Wolff. I don't know if they all play on the ground from DC. The East Coast leads the political stuff in the West Coast, and somehow the West Coast is kind of caught up in different things. So what I believe would be required, and I love the stuff that we get from the affiliates, is that there has to be some type of content consciousness, some type of program direction that I think Jim has talked about, but a lot of times you don't see anybody in the national office figuring this way out of the problem of, what do people really want to listen to in New York and San Francisco and LA and Los Angeles? And it doesn't have to be all at the same time, but isn't it true that if we were a real network, a story in the news tonight we would all be covering? I'll stop there because it's really hard to coordinate 5 independent radio stations that are all affiliated with WBAI, Pacifica, and all those affiliates. It's a very difficult question, Michael, because we never had that model. And independent means local, and local means we don't really kind of, Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. John Brinkley.
Good evening. In theory, I guess it sounds good. We already have Sojourner Truth, and you mentioned Democracy Now! That at least we get. I don't know whether Sojourner Truth is national, but it's a West Coast program, and we get it here on BAI. I guess if you had a panel or something like that that would identify the programs that would be available national. Also, I'm sure each affiliate has its archives, and people who are find a program that they like or are made aware of a particular program can surely go into the archives and pull out those programs. So in theory, it sounds like a good idea. It's a matter of the details and how it would be organized and move forward.
Thank you. Did you want to go on?
No, I meant implement it. How would, in theory, it sounds good. It's the details and implementation that requires a lot of attention.
Thank you. Jim Dingman.
Well, I've been advocating this for many years, and it is true that the devil's in the details. We do, of course, have national programming in the form of Democracy Now! That, of course, is funded independently of Pacifica. Its budget actually equals all of Pacifica and then some. So that's problem number one. Where do you get the resources? Problem number two is the level of cooperation with different stations and content. I was the chair of the National Programming Committee in the past. We argued about this. We didn't get anything done in this realm about 4 or 5 years ago. And we were on the verge of doing it as of January of this year, and we were prevented to because of a whole bunch of circumstances. What exists now with the digital possibilities, it allows us to do this. And I'm all in favor of us moving ahead. One thing we could do is, for example, work together to figure out ways to get all the different music programs around the network played. They, of course, would have to be subject to ASCAP and BMI rules, but there are some excellent music shows in every single station. And that's one model right there. But in terms of the politics of what's going on right now, I think that's where we have to use the digital methods, YouTube, use Twitter, audio functions, etc. We could do a lot of things that we're not doing right now and do them with not much resources being expended. So yeah, I'm in favor of all that completely. I think we should really experiment and figure out ways to supplement our content right now.
All right, thank you. Tom Murata, if you can hear and respond, I'd like to take you next. All right. Just so everyone knows, I think Tom is sort of with us, but unable to communicate. So, and he is a candidate. So,
If perhaps he's able to put something in the chat.
he has not put anything in the chat yet. So, James Sagerton.
Thank you, Michael. National programming. Again, as John Brinkley said, in theory, good. As Jim Dingman said, devil in the details. I agree with all of that. One thing that we learned about today at the WBAI Community Advisory Board meeting, where we had Keziah Glow and interim program director and interim general manager Bob Henley come as guest speakers. We learned that Bob Henley is working on a national level to create a national news program, which will employ our affiliates to get feeds from around the country. That's actually something I've advocated for years. I think that's a good idea. Again, devil in the details. I will refer to the convention coverage that we had, which was okay, but it didn't have a particular Pacifica slant. I don't think Pacifica is in the business of just providing news for the sake of providing news. We want to have an alternative perspective to other perspectives that are commonly found in broadcast media as per our mission statement. So I think, again, we do want to provide a national news program, but we wanted to have a Pacifica viewpoint, which would be something different. And mostly, in the way of progressively political difference. I will say a brief comment about the fact that the program director interim and the interim general manager showed up at the community advisory board today, as well as what happened at a governance committee meeting on Thursday, where there was a proposal. I'll just finish real quickly. We have to be careful to protect our local station boards. There are moves afoot in Pacifica to reduce the influence or eliminate the influence of local station boards. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Now, to let everyone know, we will be taking questions from those in attendance who are not candidates. So we'll be doing that shortly. But and please, as you formulate your question, think how to present it in 1 minute or less. So the next question is the Pacifica mission statement says that in terms of our news content, we should be putting out information that is accurate and objective. Is that currently part of WBAI's brand when it comes to programming? Should it be? And what should be our brand in terms of building up listenership and contributions? And how does that factor in with free speech as an objective of the station? So we'll take James Sagerton first.
Thank you. I wasn't expecting to come back so quickly. Accurate, and what was the other word you used? Was it neutral?
Objective.
Accurate and objective. Okay. Well, I guess we would all like to think that the way we see things is accurate and objective. Of course, others don't always see it that way. Yeah, of course, we should try to accurately portray things. Again, sometimes as a voice for the voiceless, we see things differently than the way other broadcast media may see it. I notice a lot of times on major broadcast media or cable news, they're talking a lot about the situation with air flight, what's going on with jet travel in the country, and That may not be something that the 99.5% of us are mostly on the ground are that concerned with. So there's a matter of subject matter content, and then there's a matter of the way we see things. So we may think that some of the money, for example, that's going towards promoting a rather polluting method of travel, which is in the air, might go towards less polluting kinds of travel on the ground, such as mass transit, etc. So yes, of course, we should try to be accurate, and we should also try to be objective. But of course, our viewpoints will differ based on our experience and who we are.
Thank you. Tom Murata, if you're able to participate at this point. And by the way, if you suddenly become able, and we don't know about that, just let us know. But Tom, are you available to answer that question? All right, we're going to move on. Jim Dingman, you're next.
All right, thank you. Well, the issue of what is objective, because actually a mission statement says such varied sources in the public presentation of accurate, objective, comprehensive news on all matters vitally affecting the community. Now, so what's objective? Someone's idea of objectivity would be another person's idea of bias. I personally feel that approaching these issues, it's important to be humble about it. Having been involved in journalism business for a long time, I always try to get varying sources and fact check things as much as I can if I'm going to talk about them and go into depth on an issue. Now, Pacifica gives you the freedom to do that. But again, the freedom is generally based on dozens of volunteer-free participants in the system. I think that the paid part of Pacifica, which is really Democracy Now!, they do a good job in getting information that embodies the first part of the mission statement that deals with this. That is, all sorts of, gathering information on the causes of conflict between any and all such groups, et cetera. And I think everybody tries to do that. But I would not say sometimes that some of the way we present the news is, from my point of view, rather shallow, sometimes not particularly informative, and
15 seconds.
Sometimes biased. But that's true of any news. I mean, so that's a problem that I think requires people to have grounding in basic journalistic principles.
Thank you. So a candidate who has joined us is Doug Wood. Doug, would you like to answer the question, please? Next.
Well, I just joined on a few minutes ago. I'm not sure what the question is. I'm just kind of listening in.
I'll represent to you. You're a candidate. So
Can I interrupt for a second?
yes, John Brinkley.
Unfortunately, I'm gonna have to drop off. My family dropped past to celebrate my birthday, and I'm gonna have to drop off.
Happy birthday, John.
John, would you like a crack at this question before you leave?
No, I appreciate the effort and everything, but I really need to go.
Okay. Good having you here. Thanks very much.
Let me just mention, for those who are not aware, Doug Wood is a staff member running among the staff, so he is not directly competing with the listener members.
That is correct. And this forum is open to all candidates. So, Doug, I can repeat the question for you. So hang on one second. So the Pacifica mission statement says that in terms of our news content, we should be putting out information that is accurate and objective. Is that currently part of WBAI's brand when it comes to programming? Should it be? And what should be our brand in terms of building up listenership and listener contributions? And how does that factor in with free speech as an objective of the station?
Well, I wouldn't quarrel with the news that we're putting out as a station, given the various viewpoints that are being heard. And I think that is one of the strengths of WBAI is its variety of different points of view. So, I don't think that's our problem, to be very honest with you. And it's great that you're talking about that, but I think that question may be missing the point. And if you ask me what's wrong with WBAI, that would have a very different answer. And it would revolve around slates of candidates being elected and fighting with each other. And, I just would urge people, get out of the slate business. Stop electing slates of people. That's a real fundamental problem at WBAI. If we don't get away from that, we're never going to solve this problem. So that's the answer to the question that you didn't ask, but thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you very much. Jack DePalma, you're next.
Yeah, Michael, the hard thing is to get objectivity because everybody's got subjectivity in anything they do. It's a fundamental problem of all sorts of points of view. And the other one was the other phrase there, objectivity and
Accurate.
well, I was going to say this, but Doug actually said it for me. With the limited resources that we have in New York, like if you think about what really goes on with democracy now, we do a hell of a job in New York reporting other news from other stations, right? The Washington news we get, and the Pacifica National news we get in the morning, I believe. In the afternoon, sometimes we get a replay of it, I guess. And then, of course, we also get news from Paul DiRienzo, which many times is not only, accurate and, relevant and worth listening to. I sometimes missed it and I say, maybe I'll go back and re-listen to it because you can't get news that we get on WBAI, not Democracy Now!, not these other things, except in, alternative places. Cable news has got some of it. But you can't get any liberal or anti-war or how shall I say it, authoritarian or, why are they closing the libraries? Why are they banning the books? That should be on WBAI, and it is. So I would just add what Doug said and what everybody else has been saying. Objective is very difficult. Accurate is really a goal. And in fact, with limited resources, we do a hell of a job. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. All right. Now, is there any candidate present that has not gotten a chance to answer that question? Tom Murata, I think we're not in communication with you, but anybody else? All right. Now, as I said, people who are here attending who are not candidates can also ask questions. We want to keep those down to a minute or less. With a show of hands, or can you otherwise identifying yourself, is there someone who would like to ask a question of the candidates? Is there anyone?
I would like to ask a question of the candidates.
All right, go ahead, Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman.
All of the candidates here today are former or current members of the local station board. So I would like to ask each of them what they have accomplished being on the board before or currently, and what unfinished business they have to accomplish if they are able to remain or return.
Thank you very much. So, all right, we will start with Jim Dingman.
Well, I'm proud of the fact that in the past, unlike some people who are running, I helped accomplish the reduction of hundreds of premiums, which actually allowed the station to make money. I'm happy that in the past I had made phone calls to people who were owed premiums, resolved their premium problems, and helped raise money for the station as a result of that. I'm happy that I started the process, which I promised I would do, of trying to get us back into the CPB. Now, the problem with that, of course, is that I've encountered opposition from some of the people in the network. The first year I brought that up, it was voted down. At that point, we had still the ability to perhaps get back in the system. But yeah, I'm happy that I've started that process, and I'd want to keep fighting it. But that process to be successfully implemented requires the station in New York, in particular, to turn itself around fiscally, and the station in Los Angeles to turn itself around fiscally. That is, get out of this financial problem we're in. And that is a real dilemma. But yeah, I'm happy that those are the things I started. And there's lots of other things I started that I'd want to complete. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to just clarify, part of his answer was to what I was asking, but volunteer things that you don't have to be on the local station board.
Okay, Eleanor, let's not, quibble with the candidates' answers. They are what they are, all right? So the next candidate is Doug Wood again.
All right. Well, to be really honest, I've been frustrated. I haven't been able to do a single thing since I've been on the board. One of the things I tried to do, which I thought would be a simple thing, would be to move the roll call to the first item of business, as it is in every other organization I've ever been associated with and every one I can find. And to watch that get shot down, I was ashamed, really, of the way that was handled. I thought it was, just argument for argument's sake, which I find much of the LSB meetings to be about. Like I said before, if we can't solve this problem, then we can't fix WBAI. If we can't stop finding, reasons to object to what the other side is doing, I mean, it's just a colossal waste of time. So I'm hanging in there, hoping that at some point there will be something that I can actually help with. I have tremendous amount of experience in nonprofits and in business, and I'm just astounded at the dysfunction of the LSB.
Thank you. Tom Murata, if you can answer, I know you have not actually been on the LSB, but you have been on the community advisory board, so perhaps you could answer in that context. And all right, and I'm going to assume that when I ask and I don't hear from Tom, we're not in communication with him yet. So Jack DePalma, you're next.
Thank you, Michael. Well, I've always thought the long picture was the most important thing to consider. I was instrumental in helping. I was physically helping get WBAI off Wall Street. I told Bertolt when I met him, and then 5 years later, after a flood and a lot of effort on many people's parts, including my own, and 2 weeks of hard work, WBAI is no longer on Wall Street. You got to wonder to yourself, what were they thinking? Even after the Trade Center came down and the transmitter got more valuable, and that's why we got raped and robbed. The second thing is that a WBAI is no longer on the Empire State Building. Another thing that I said, how could you keep telling us that you're paying a bill that you're not paying? And I watched you go on for 10 years, Doug. So your patience is being taxed, but I understand. You may be in the more reasonable crowd nowadays, but people in the WBAI land, I'm talking about Pacifica people, not WBAI people, but people in Pacifica dropped the ball and kicked the ball down the road and kicked the can down the road. And then they said, what's going on here? And $1 million. I don't know. They juggled the building in New York when they had a church they could have paid the taxes on. I hear it was New York politics and Pacifica inability to pay a small bill. Well, anyhow, the third thing I would point out to you, Doug, that I've been involved with WBAI is exactly what Jim Dingman said. Before Bob Henley was at WBAI, He might have been a guest on some of the shows, I guess. But there were people really actively moving around thousands of premiums and books and stuffs. And they had a whole working back room back in 2000 and 2010 even. And even in 2015, 2016, they moved all those premiums to World Trade Center estates over there on the west side before they moved it to Brooklyn. And it's always been true that there's always been failures to deliver, failures to get what people ask for, because we have a clientele that thinks they're going to get it on a silver platter. You know, they're going to get it tomorrow. I heard somebody call into Keziah at the show he was on. Excuse me, I get 3 minutes?
No.
I only get 2 minutes.
Yes.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, let me just finish one more sentence. The idea that Keziah was called up by someone that said she was going to get her premium, Keziah personally attended to this on Thursday, I think. They packed it, sent it, and the woman said on Sunday, called in, right? Oh, I didn't get it yet. Now, I don't know what you think the United States Postal Service is, but because she said sometimes they steal the packages off my doorstep.
Okay.
And that does happen. Thank
Jack,
you, Michael.
That's more than a sentence. Okay. So thank you very much. So James Sagerton.
Okay, I was knocked off for a little bit. So I think the question is, what have I accomplished?
By being on board.
What you have accomplished in the past and what.
Eleanor, I was asking Michael. Thank you.
Well,
I
actually, it was
was
Eleanor's question, so she's.
Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
She's free to make it clear. So.
Okay, thank you.
What,
all right, so
what have you accomplished? What have you accomplished when you were on the LSB, and what does there remain to do that requires your remaining on the LSB or being re-elected to the LSB, depending on, you know, the candidate, whether they are or are coming back?
Okay, thank you, Eleanor. So I started out in Pacifica as a volunteer, and at that time we were heavy into the premium model of fundraising. And so I spent time packing premiums. I spent time in my personal vehicle actually delivering premiums when we got backed up on them. I made phone calls to donors. I tried to add, because of my background in law, I tried to add a legal perspective to the boards that I was on. When I was chair of the National Finance Committee, we finally got our finances in order such that we could accomplish the last audit that was done. We had caught up on 3 or 4 back audits that hadn't been done. We finally got our audits done, and for the first time in years, we were up to date with our audits. And then, of course, the financial problems presented themselves again, and now we are 2 years behind again on audits. I would like to make sure that we get our audits done so that we can reach out to donors and give them the information that they require before they donate small, medium, and large sums of money.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So I believe we have another question from one of the attendees. Daniel Borgstrom in Virginia, do you have a question that's answered and can be answered by all the candidates that you can express in a minute or less?
Hi, this is Virginia. I get that you guys are, I believe, all in New York, but as far as New York goes, I'm in Berkeley, and one of the slates in particular, not mine, is, as you guys all know, I'm sure, so very down on the New York station and some others for what they feel is severe dysfunction. And I guess my question is, how is the new manager going? And it's very hard for me to know what to say. I try and stick up for you all the time, and I'd like to know how people feel we can help you, support you.
Thank you. So Jim Dingman, you'll go first.
The easy question. Well, Well, this is my opinion and my opinion only. The new interim general manager came into the situation several months ago. There was a long controversy within the network about the previous general manager who'd been in the station for many years. He was terminated along with the program director over a pretext, a misunderstanding about how to implement the new consent decree of the FCC imposed on the station and the whole network. The new interim general manager has successfully gone out and raised a lot of money from labor unions. I think that's terrific. The problem is that the amount of money raised from the shows has actually declined dramatically. So the amount of money coming in as a result of the collapse of the premium model is many times less than what it was before the consent decree was implemented. So that I have a feeling is affecting every station, but it certainly affects New York. He has a program director interim program director who worked with one of the strip shows, Leonard Lopez. She also has a daunting task. So the question is how to change the situation around. And it's going to be a work in progress. I mean, there's lots of things I have to say, but I think I'd want to say them in a public setting like this. Because it might not be, if it's not appropriate, I'm still a member of the national board. It's a tough, complicated situation here in New York.
Thank you. Tom Murata, I think maybe Tom has now signed off. So, all right. I'm not going to call Tom again because I don't see him anymore unless I see him. So, James Sagerton.
Thank you. How much time for the answer?
2 minutes.
Thank you. Okay. First, I want to say that Virginia and Daniel have been very helpful to WBAI in defending us against the majority at their station, KPFA, which does an almost Orwellian type of propaganda against WBAI. Doug Wood spoke about the factions, and well, you ain't seen nothing yet until you've seen how the what we call the New Day group in Pacifica dumps on WBAI and basically says things that aren't true and takes money that was supposed to be dedicated to WBAI and gives it to the national office, et cetera, et cetera. Now, not to deny that WBAI has had financial problems that need to be dealt with. Yes, they have, and yes, we do need to deal with those problems. But it's just over the top the way other stations, particularly KPFA, the majority there, talks about and deals with WBAI. It's almost like, you need to have an enemy to keep your own group together, and we have become their iconic enemy in some regards. Now, as far as how is the GM doing, I would refer to the comments made by a Chinese leader. I think it was Chow En-lai, but I'm not positive. When some Western reporter asked him, "What do you think of Chinese civilization?" And the answer was, "It's too soon to tell."
Thank you. Jack DePalma.
I listen to Jim talk about what goes on. James talk about what goes on, and I'm going to see it again. Virginia, who's moving around the house, and Daniel are our friends. One of the things I would say to people is WBAI needs a lot of friends. For a lot of years, WBAI had a lot of people working inside that really weren't acting friendly sometimes. I don't want to say the wrong thing, but as Jim said, this could be very dangerous. Recently, it became clear during the CAB meeting today, Jim, that people were saying, we have to let the FCC know that we're not down with that. We think that we should be allowed to do it that way. But I would just point out that what was originally said, Jim, is that WBAI is the whipping boy for Pacifica. At least that's what I think. And Berthold was the whipping boy for the failure of Pacifica to realize they were doing it in K and T, I believe, Jim, you know. Gary Knoll used to be on Arizona Public Television, I guess, PBS or whatever. Well, anyhow, the point is, it's simply the idea that Mr. Borgstrom, you realize that we paid the $25,000 and we weren't the only ones doing it in Pacifica. So maybe Pacifica could pick up like a third of the bill or 2/3 of the other bill. And I don't think they will, because what Jim and James said is true. They look at us as being, you know, we're the black sheep, we're the bad boy, we're the big bill provider because they don't know how to take care of their business. And it's a disgrace because the Empire State Building, oh yeah, Jack, they'll come and figure that out someday. And the same thing on Wall Street. What the hell were we doing on Wall Street after the Trade Center came down? It was just a big, you know, somebody else will take care of it. And, you know, they just threw away their own money. And then they blamed it on us because we don't make contracts with landlords and towers. I'm not Pacifica. I'm the LSB, or I'm just a volunteer that wants to hear free speech radio. Thank you, Eleanor.
Thank you. Doug Wood.
Well, I think it's important to be clear about the FCC. The FCC has rules and regulations for stations like WBAI, which have a special license, educational non-commercial license. I honestly don't think that the FCC would have bothered us, but we went not just a little bit over the rules. We went way over the rules. We went way outside permitted behavior, and it's really a shame. Frankly, I think if you're going to be the general manager of an educational or nonprofit commercial station, you have an obligation to know what those FCC rules, and that's part of your job, is to make sure that we're not stepping over the line. And unfortunately, the previous management team allowed WBAI to step way, way over the line to the point where the FCC got involved, and now we're under a consent decree. The problem with the consent decree is we're under the microscope with FCC, and we have to be very, very careful about what we do. I think it's very unfortunate that that was allowed to happen, but it happened. And I think we have to, we have to deal with it. I don't think premiums should be out of the ballpark as they are now. I think there's a way to get back to some of what we were doing before to raise some money. I think it's got to be done very carefully. And I'd love to be part of that. ASCAP is also under a consent decree, and some of you may know I sit on the board of directors of ASCAP, where I lead the legal committee. And so I've been to the Justice Department. I've negotiated consent decrees. I know what this is. This is serious stuff. And just to complain that somebody blew the whistle on us is, I think, to miss the point.
All right, thank you. We had someone who joined us with by telephone with a telephone number ending in 8963. Are you a candidate? You don't have to identify yourself if you don't want to, but if you're a candidate and would like to be participating here, please let me know. So, all right. As I just to reiterate, we will take questions from attendees here who are not candidates. So I don't know if someone else listening would like to ask a question. If you have a question, think about your question. It should be something that can be addressed to all of the candidates generally and expressed in less than a minute. So I'll go on with the next question myself. So hang on a second. Is there value to WBAI in its programming to be singing to the choir? Are there drawbacks? Are there potentially problems or drawbacks if we broadcast to a small bubble and don't break out of it? And if there is value or problems with either of these things, what should we be doing about it? So, all right. Doug Wood, you're first.
Well, yeah, it's a problem that we broadcast to a bubble and a diminishing bubble. I'm in favor of trying to expand the aperture and bring in younger voices. I'm old, and other hosts are also old. I love our show. I think we have a great time, and we get a lot of positive feedback from our audience. But I think we need to find new young voices, as I say, to bring in and expand our range. I think we need to do a lot more cross promotion in terms of putting in carts about shows that are happening that people may not know about. It's one of the ideas I've been trying to push for a while without response, but that's okay. I'm patient. I'll keep pushing. So it's all about expanding our audience. If we can't expand our audience, we will not survive as a station. So, and Jim correctly keeps talking about that. We've got to absolutely find a solid financial footing, and that's only going to come not by reaching out to more labor unions. And I think Bob is doing a great job. Don't get me wrong. He's plugged a big hole in the boat, but it's not sustainable long-term. What's sustainable long-term is growing our audience. And so we need to find every possible way to do that.
Thank you. Jack DePalma, you're next.
I totally agree, Doug. We have to grow the audience with content that compels people. The niche audience versus the broadcast issue. Very difficult to solve, Michael, because what radio is intimate. Everybody said this to me. There's a certain amount of intimacy and continuity, and then there's a certain amount of intimacy and spontaneity. And the spontaneity has to do with the fact that you can't predict sometimes what you're about to hear. That's why listener call-ins is sometimes the most valuable type of radio. I've gotten this from people for the times I've been listening to WBAI, from some of the best broadcasters on the radio station over 40 years, and probably the people that were there that were program directors, or even people that were able to, like Tony Bates, as much as you can like or dislike the fellow, is a huckster that is able to raise $1 million in one day. I'm sorry to say it, but that's one of the mistakes or one of the problems, that we can't just kind of like scratch our heads and say, well, how do we make up $1 million in one day? Because New York has what, millions of listeners, Doug, if they're potentially listening. But if they're not listening and they're not giving you $20, you can have 5 listeners with $100. Doesn't mean enough that, anyhow, I believe that we have to grow the audience, period. And if we don't grow the audience soon, we're basically going to fade away. And even the union members, I don't even think they listen to us. I talked to a number of union members that their unions give us money. As Doug said, we have to grow our listen, have to double our listenership every month for the next 5 months.
Thank you. James Sagerton.
Thank you, Michael. First, I want to implore our management, our board members, and even our candidates to stop critiquing the performance of prior employees. Pacifica has had enough defamation lawsuits that we should have learned this lesson. There was never any proof provided. We didn't contest the FCC petition. People were let go without any documentation of claims that were made. And we have people that keep repeating these critiques with no proof. It leads to problems. It leads to liability. I hope we can all stop doing that. Let these things play out behind the scenes in the courtrooms if necessary. But it's foolhardy to keep talking about these things publicly. Now, about the question, the Pacifica bubble, yeah, we can expand our audience. We need to go into a more digital platforms and expand our audience that way. People are using radio differently today than they used to. Nobody sits around the radio in the living room very much anymore, the way they used to when Pacifica was founded. So we need to do all of those things, but we have a tiny market share. So there's lots of room for us to expand our market share in radio in New York and be successful, but we have to have broader appeal, a broader audience, and sure, younger people. But we also need to expand to where our audiences are, and they're online to a large extent. So we need to do both. Move online and expand our audience within radio.
Thank you. Jim Dingman.
Well, before I quickly get into that issue, I just wanted to just mention something that came up in the previous question. That is, with the consent decree, we have to deal with the consent decree whether we like it or not. People who want to avoid dealing with it is ridiculous. It's like putting a giraffe's head into the ground. But I do feel that the bringing of the FCC complaint, regardless of how one views its merits, was a hostile act on the part of people in California and people associated with the signal area that Daniel and Virginia are attached to. Now, getting to the audience question, look, we have 0.1% in New York. Lou Hill's theory of listenership is 2%. So 0.1% versus 2%. That's how Hill figured KPFA would survive when he created it. We don't have any station in any market in Pacifica that has 2% of the market share. The market share in New York is 20 million people. We haven't had anything close to those numbers since 1972, when 500,000 people used to sit and listen to WBAI each week. 500,000. And our budget back then was $4.8 million in 2024 terms. So that shows you the difference when you have 500,000 people listening to you a week, as opposed to 20 to 30 to 40 to maybe at the top 60,000 people. So that's the most important issue to change. Now, how to do it is where everybody gets bogged down in faction fights of all types. I don't want to lose my airtime, but that's one of the reasons why, as a national board member, I put forth a motion 2 years ago. Every show has to reapply every year, because we cannot, why should a show be on for 30 years and then nobody listens to it? It just doesn't make sense. So that has to change.
Thank you. All right. So as I said, people who are here, who are not candidates, can present questions. Do I have someone in attendance who wants to present a question that can be generally answered by all of the candidates, and they can state in less than a minute? All right. That I will give you another, move on to the next question here, which is WBAI is special in that it is listener supported. So that first is WNYC, which is only 30% listener supported. What do you think the station should do in terms of of relationships?
You have not entered any numbers. Please re-enter your.
Okay. All right. Yes. If you're here and you're not speaking, please, it'll help to keep yourself muted. So what do you think the station should think about in terms of relationships, cooperations, collaborations, partnerships with other entities, which will likely not be financed the way that WBAI is, by example, for instance, Manhattan Neighborhood Networks would be one example of a partnership, or a very different example would be the Jalopy Music Theater, etc. So we will take James Segerton first.
Oh, good. I'm so glad you're taking me first, because if Jim Dingman got a hold of this, all I could do is repeat whatever he said. Glad you got to me first. So, yeah, of course we should be collaborating with other organizations, with universities, journalism schools, museums, all kinds of things in the city that we should be collaborating with. The MNN issue was quite particular. It was being run by a person who was formerly associated with one of the factions within WBAI. And he announced that he would completely control our content. He might keep some of our shows, but he reserved the right to completely take all of our shows off the air. That was in the first iteration. And the second iteration, I think it was a little more open to negotiation. But we can't surrender our editorial freedom, our mission statement, our raison d'etre, our reason for being, to another entity. We can cooperate with them. We can get interns from schools, but we can't turn our creative license and our freedom of speech over to any other entities. That's what we're about. We're a free speech platform, very unusual in broadcast. We're also democratically operated, which is unique in the world. And personally, I'm in it to maintain that.
Thank you. Jim Dingman.
Well, I'm going to quote Mao Zedong. Pacifica and WBAI has to be as the gorillas are to the people, fish to the sea. We have to be completely engaged in every institution in New York City. And I've, in the past, gone out of my way to create those linkages and seen them screwed up. For example, I created a linkage with Lincoln Center with the Film Society. That got screwed up. I've created linkages with Carnegie Hall, and that got screwed up. So, you know, people have to change, you know, the idea that, oh my God, if we're associating with Carnegie Hall, is that something terrible? Because I personally think that every kind of organization, down to the grassroots, down to the radical organizations we associate with, everybody has to be involved in defending and creating a alternative free space to express ideas, which is what Pacifica embodies in its essence. Now, I'm right now taking classes at Columbia University. I'm out looking for talent, you know, and guess what? They don't know anything about WBAI. They think WBAI is the name of some sort of liquor or something like that. So some guy actually said that to me. So, you know, that's one of the big problems we have to solve. And in terms of a practical thing, you know, Jose Santiago, when he used to be the news department head, used to suggest taking teams and going to every community board in New York City and spending time with that community board to find out what's going on at the grassroots in those local areas of New York City. I'm talking about the 5 boroughs, and report on them. And that would, imagine if we've been doing that for 10 years, imagine the kind of community support. People like to talk about the grassroots community support. Well, that would be real community support, not rhetorical BS support that people like to conjure up. So yeah, there's lots we can do.
Thank you. Jack Topama.
How do I follow that, Jim? Jim Dingman and James Sagerton said all that I believe about what the WBAI is in terms of how we liaison. I would add movie theaters. I used to know a fellow that worked at the Joyce. I know Jim worked with a friend of mine from high school. We actually do it with David Rothenberg with Broadway plays. Off-Broadway is very vibrant in New York because Broadway is vibrant and off-Broadway is vibrant. And we're very lucky to have David Rothenberg. I think he makes $6,000, a month, $10,000 a month. And we should get him his $900 for the book that he did for Felipe Luciano. Yes, it's true. I talked with Jose Santiago, and it was an eye-opener because he believed that when you talk about a community radio station news organization, one of the things Michael wrote was that I want to revitalize news in New York City. I wish I could. I'm not of the right age anymore to do things with young people, but send 4 young people with a staff reporter to community meetings. I know my local city council guy is pretty open and talkable, and you'll get a different take on what's going on in New York because the city council and what's going on in New York is really, they don't report it on the TV. Maybe you get a little bit on Channel 1 or this or that. We get some of it on WBAI, what's going on here and there, you know. But if you don't have Linda Saussure and you don't have people, you know, sticking their noses into other people's lives, you don't hear what's really going on. There's so many things that are going on that, you know, aren't reported that are just necessary to be on WBAI and to be treated with respect and, you know, honesty and, you know, objectivity and finally, accuracy. It's a wonderful thing to have a radio station. The problem is we underutilize it in that nature. All right. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Doug Wood, you're next.
One of the avenues that I'd like to explore a little bit more is whether or not we can get foundation money. And before you all jump up and down and say, "Oh my God, we can't do that because we don't have books," we don't have actually, you know, books that are correct or complete, or we haven't had them audited. I'm talking about individual show producers who may be in a position to solicit and receive foundation money. We have so many programs on WBAI that I listen to, and I think, I know there are nonprofit I know there are foundations out there that support this kind of thing. And, you know, I'd love to see if we couldn't get somebody pro bono to work with our show producers to put them together with foundations that support the kind of work that they're doing, whether it's well, you know, there's any number of situations where I think there are foundations, including our own, and we are looking for essentially an underwriter for our show who will be able to support our show at WBAI. We have to find a workaround for the fact that we don't have books that funders want to see. We just don't have the numbers. And so the workaround may be to have individual producers be matched with foundations to support what they're doing on WBAI. So that's one of my ideas, and I'm working in that right now.
Thank you. So we are looking to take questions from people who are in attendance who are not candidates. And we'll do that in a second. I just want to check in. Do we have any candidates?
Thomas Murata has arrived and he's connected to audio.
I see that Thomas Murata has just arrived, and it doesn't look like he's connecting to audio. So Thomas, welcome.
Yes. Hi.
Excellent. Welcome. We can hear you. So,
Thank you.
So Tom, would you like to answer this question? I don't know if you heard it. Well, I'm happy to repeat it. And then if any other candidate has arrived who has not been answering questions, please let me know and we will ask you questions. Tom, can I give you this question?
Yes.
All right. So WBAI is special in that it is listener supported, accountable to the listeners, versus at WNYC, which is only 30% listener supported. What do you think the station should think about in terms of relationships, cooperations, collaborations, partnerships with other entities, which will likely not be financed like WBAI? Example, Manhattan Neighborhood Network, or very differently, the Jalopy Music Theater. And you have 2 minutes to answer.
I think some of the people that are already in office are trying to use our affiliates, working with them to work in their communities to get their issues aired. I don't know how many affiliates we have in the Pacifica network, but they're incredible resources, and people at that end where local media is dying, they need those local affiliates plus us to get their word out on their issues. So working with the affiliates we already have is the way to go. The main thing with BAI in New York is just to get people know. Again, there's a member of the CAB that always says, we're the best station in the country in the middle of the media capital of the world that nobody knows about. We got to get people to know about us. And the question was to collaborate with our affiliates and work on community issues. And I think that's what BAI is doing now with unions, getting their issues actually aired. That's not being aired anyplace else. And I think it has some good results, especially on reversing Medicare disadvantage. And that's, I think, just the beginning. So I think working with the communities, with our affiliates, and airing their issues and showing that of our value would help us grow. But we got to let people know we exist. That's the bottom line.
Thank you. Is there any other candidate present that has not been answering questions? All right. I think I have a question from one of our attendees, Daryl McPherson. Are you raising your hand with a question?
Yes, I am, and thank you so much for taking my call. I totally agree with you. May I call you Michael? Of course I may. Michael, that the only things that matters here is how many people are listening to your station, and then how much capital can you extract from that listenership. So my thought here is that all nonprofits need to be contacted, and we need to make ourselves available for them to air their issue in exchange for getting their listeners, their clients, their supporters to listen to the station. Same thing with the unions. We need to do a mailing out to the unions. Thank you so much for your leadership supporting WBAI. Now you listen and see if what you hear is how we activate you as a union member, so that rather than being standoff and letting the leadership do what.
Thank you, Daryl. So Jack DePalma, would you respond to that, please? Jack DePalma, you're muted.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite catch the question. I believe everybody's saying the same thing. We have to like recognize the great potential that we have, try to reach out in any which way that's available and possible with limited resources. Like I said, we have to double the listenership for 5 months every month, or at least start growing again. There was a point under Linda and Bertol where we were growing like 4 or 5 years ago, under COVID. And you saw some slight growth, 0.5%, 0.25%. There was points when it wasn't 0.1% of the listenership in New York City, and we could do it. I don't think it's hard to do, but you have to remember radio is an auditory experience. You're playing music. That's why we have to liaison with music and Broadway, and people that know things like how to entertain you with sounds. Producers like James Irsay is an excellent producer because he focuses your listening. But that's the old radio station. I don't know who's going to do it now. I don't know if we have people that can compel you to listen, and send money if you're listening and you're enjoying it. That new jazz show on it, and I think they just replaced it, by the way, or was it Saturday? All right. We'll see what happens, but that's the problem with WBAI. It's the best station that no one knows anything about. And because it talks an alternative point of view, sometimes we look at the alternative point of view and we think that there aren't people that are interested. But I run into people all the time that are very interested in alternative and hopeful messaging and progressive ideas. And, climate change is not a hoax. And, what was that phrase? Honest and objective and accurate and newsworthy. We got a radio station, but we're not utilizing it to create listeners.
Thank you. Tom Morato, would you care to respond?
Yes, I think there's an answer to Daryl McPherson's comment. There's a lot of people in unions. I'm a member of 2 unions, the American Postal Workers Union and the National Postal Mail Handlers Union. And I would say 45% of the people in those unions are Trumpsters. My leadership is Trumpsters. I I was in the set. I went to the Labor Day parade last Saturday. I was in there. I talked to my national leader, and Senator Schumer was there, the head of the Senate. He was there greeting everybody, saying Senator Schumer is a supporter of unions. And I asked my president, Paul Grogian, why now that President Joe Biden has put 2 nominees up for the Board of Governors, and we can get rid of Louis DeJoy, whose purpose is to destroy the Postal Service for many reasons, and for his own reasons, and turn it into a truck, a company where all we do is deliver parcels, and his truck company can make a lot of money from it. But the reason why we don't play the game, we don't contribute to campaigns. It just comes down to that. And my president couldn't figure out why Schumer wasn't moving on it. Well, we don't contribute. We spend money on football games, baseball games, but we don't contribute to candidates. And national leadership in all the 4 postal unions are very dumb on that. We got to get smarter. And I'm trying to answer the question, but the answer. What I'm trying to get is we could offer the union people slots of time to air their issues. Have the transit union one week, another union another week, another union, and when they could actually see they can air their issues, they might become more interested in BAI.
Thank you. James Sagerton.
For that, which is, for the part about 45% of his union members are Trumpsters, or maybe that was the leadership. That's part of
the whole membership.
Yeah, that's part of the problem with relying too much on unions. You have to pick your allies. But someone, I think it was Daryl, who is a man I respect a great deal, and I'll be the first one to say it. A good search. Let's use good search and make WBAI our charity of choice. It was said that what we want to do is extract the most revenue we possibly can in order to, through the use of our radio signal, in order to be successful. And that is actually the model for commercial radio. It's not the model for public radio, which or listener-sponsored radio, which Pacifica invented, was then adopted by the public radio, National Public Radio, and PBS, and they took our model and ran with it, and now they're all doing underwriting with corporations and doing ads for car companies and etc. So we have a mission statement, and it says that we're supposed to represent the unrepresented. And so we have to be very careful about our associations, but we definitely have to spread our wings and associate with organizations that are like-minded and that have common missions, or partially in common, and go in that direction.
Thank you. Jim Dingman.
Well, when I was in my early 20s, I was fired from several jobs for union organizing. And when I was in unions, I was a Teamster. And I was surrounded by people who were supporters of Governor Wallace. So I've always taken from that period of time the question of, why did somebody want to support an individual who, frankly, is against his class interests? And that's the kind of dilemma we're dealing with right now. Now, to get to what I sort of see, part of what Daryl was pointing into is that we have to indeed confront these kind of contradictions in our society. Don't shy away from them. The idea that, we can't have a dialogue with Trumpsters is ridiculous. We have to have the dialogue with people like that. We have to have intelligent discourse with people who think differently than us. That's one of the problems with Pacifica in general. They want to preach to the choir. They want to go to the niche audience and never question what's being talked about. That's why when people put forth ideas about COVID or other issues, which I may not agree with personally, I personally think they should be expressed on the air, even if I don't agree with them. And this gets into this question of speaking to the needs of people that we normally don't speak to. We can't expect the labor unions, if they're going to give money. This is labor leadership that's giving us money. It's not the rank and file in those unions giving us money. They could, they could care less about Pacifica. They want to listen to ESPN. I don't have a problem with that, but I want to have a dialogue with people like that. I want to dialogue with people who don't agree with what I think. And that gets back to the debate issue. And yes, people will be attracted to things where they feel that their needs are being taken seriously and talked about. I mean, Gail can correct me if I'm misinterpreting him, but I think that is something we have to address.
Thank you. And I think we have some more questions from people who are attendees. So this is going to be difficult to figure out, but we have someone who has called in by phone, who has a hand raised. They were one of the people who arrived relatively recently, and they are, there's.
Yeah, that sounds like me. Is that me?
That is
no.
you. Yes, it is.
Yes,
oh, really?
This is my ad here. Thank you.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, yeah, I was going back and forth. Yeah, I think.
What's that?
No, it's my ad. Yes.
Okay, thanks. First of all, I tuned in about 18 or so minutes ago to the graciousness of getting the right connection through Daryl. And I'd like clarification. I heard a few minutes of someone speaking to the use of foundations and underwriting, and I'd like identity of that person. I'd like to know who all some sweep of all the candidates there, and my specific questions and concerns are coming into the 21st century, one of my specialties, and podcasts, both podcasts and possibility of generating much income, and also as with WNYC, I think they're called personal assistants, Echo, Siri, and I can't say all the names, but where you could tune in. If you have one of those, you can tune in to WNYC live and or on the archive. And I'd also like to know about. Okay, thank you.
All right, okay. We'll consider that a finished question. So, Jim Dingman.
All right. Well, the podcast issue, I've been actually engaged in podcasts practically now for several years, and Pacifica is still back in the 20th century when it comes to this. So, there's a lot to be said about how to move into this dimension. I think you're talking about, as I understand it in my ad, you're talking about these sound devices where people can generate, listening to a radio station. You can correct me if I'm wrong, in their house, which I think are really cool. I think there's just all these other elements that we have not even experimented with in any kind of significant way to integrate into the analog radio. We're years behind. We have to catch up quickly. Someone was talking earlier about local news. I had somebody on from Harvard 2 years ago, a professor who was advocating and trying to raise $100 million for local news coverage because he felt the way to solve the problem was have radio step in. That offer was made to Pacifica, yet nobody wanted to take advantage of that. So, that's the part of my attitude about this. I've been in this game for a long time, as people know. And, there's a resistance locally in the stations because people don't want to give up their airtime. And the way to handle the airtime problem is to basically use the digital revolution to broaden the airtime concept so that people can perhaps do things that they might not have done before, but they can do them differently because we have these new devices we can use that can communicate with people. And we see that it's been demonstrated practically that someone who goes on a YouTube stream can get 30 to 40 to 50,000 people listening to them, and how many people on the average listen to the AI show? 500 to 1,000 at the most, and that's true of all the stations.
Thank you, James Sagerton.
For a concise restatement of the question. You restate your basic question, and
besides podcasts and the personal assistants, I was also asking about, which didn't get addressed, who had spoke about the foundations and underwriting that I caught the last few minutes of, and also when does BAI get a grievance complaint process, which will hopefully bring back many former listeners and would have made a difference in the defense with John V. and his outrageous, reckless behaviors trying to shut down BAI, and also the bylaws, getting enforcement of the bylaws by present management. Thank you.
Go ahead, James.
Okay, well, that's a lot of different questions. I don't think I have time to go into all of it. Enforcing the bylaws is important, of course. That's has to do with how we implement our mission statement, which is our reason for being. People interpret the bylaws differently. That leads to problems sometimes, but trying to stick to the spirit of them is the point. We had a grievance process. I know the union has a grievance process. People call us grievance radio. I don't know about that, but we have the people, Maxine and Denise, who are in the office and who take people's phone calls, who call in and try to deal with them as best that they can, frequently, most of the time successfully. So we do have that. As far as podcasts, that's critical. That's another part of becoming a better at our digital presence. Also, we have to use YouTube, the biggest publisher in the world. We know that they censor. That's why digital radio is kind of a backstop against censorship online, which we know is growing by leaps and bounds. And the other thing was the foundation and underwriting. And I don't know who was saying what when that you're asking about, but I will say the foundation does have an underwriting policy, and it excludes underwriting from groups that are involved with the use of fossil fuels, engage in union busting, engage in racist or sexist practices, are anti-choice, etc. So we have a very detailed underwriting policy, which is probably not implemented as well as it should be.
Time.
Thank you, Jack DePalma.
Michael, how long are we planning on going for?
I think we'll be going at least till 8 o'clock, maybe a little after.
8:15. Okay, thank you. The fact is that WBAI is a terrestrial radio station, but I believe nowadays we should focus on what's going on internationally. That we have many on the website to listen.
I'm sorry, I'm going to mute James because of the wind noise. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. WBAI is an international radio station, not only because we have terrestrial signal in New York, which costs us to keep going, but I believe we also have many listeners on the internet. And I believe we sometimes get money from them. And I'd be interested to see how that breaks down. As far as, going for podcasts and the like, I believe it's the responsibility of the individual producers. I heard today that Leonard was podcasting and this and that. I know Nissan suggested, I see his picture there, suggested that he was going to help out if he could to try to figure out how to jumpstart some of that more eased sharing. Today during the CAB meeting, Tom Murata pointed out something that I know a lot of people that might know how to do this, underutilize it. You can go to the archives and you could share. It's like a sideways Y with 3 dots, it's like a Y with the two dots on one end and one dot on the other. That allows you to share something, which means I can copy and paste and send a hyperlink that'll link you to a audio file in the archives at WBAI. So you could say, oh, wow, I heard this great radio show about this, and I thought you'd want to go buy this book, and we could talk about that after we read the book together or something. You know, because we are really an educational institution, and I'll just reiterate what I said before. We have the capability of using sound and audio to compel people to do things, or to listen, or to learn and to grow and to educate, and perspectives and different points of view that give people an honest and an accurate viewpoint about many different experiences that they may never have known about. That's why BAI is so valuable to me. And I'm not a Trump supporter, even though I am a union person, and I understand exactly what they're saying. Every time I run into my family, they're all confused people about a lot of things, and I don't want to tell them listen to WBAI, but that's the answer to their problems. So I would just say that we have to go into the digital age. We have to go into the podcasting age. We have to go into the YouTube age. I know, Eleanor. Thank you. I understand what it means.
Thank you, Tom Murata.
Yes, we have to reach the people that need to hear us. Now, this must have been 3 weeks ago. John McDonough, taxi cab driver, well known on BAI, came out and made an outrageous statement 3 or 4 weeks ago, and because of that, he got onto some social media platform where hundreds of thousands of people heard about him and knew his name, and maybe even knew he was associated with BAI because he said something outrageous. And that was his 15 minutes of fame. Somehow we got to get onto these new media, and while we're there, let them know BAI exists. And that was just one opportunity. Just because he said something silly, all of a sudden there's hundreds of thousands of people around the country that heard about and knew what his name was and what he said. So somehow we got to take advantage of these new media outlets to let people know we exist. We got to get into the ears of the people with the devices they use every day. We got to get there.
Thank you. All right. We have someone calling in by phone with a telephone number ending in 8963. Your hand is up, and I believe you have a question of one that you can, for all the candidates generally, that you can express in a minute or less.
Is that me?
Yes, no, I think it's me. My extension is 8963. All right. The question, we have 2 more weeks before the election period concludes. What have you done as a candidate to get the delegate the debate advertised, i.e. carts on WBAI, on the radio, the actual debates that you're having currently on the radio at a popular time and time slot? And then the second question is, on the 30th of this month, the New York Health Act group is going to have a demonstration at City Hall at 11 a.m. How many of the candidates will be there to dialogue with the people that will participate in that activity? Those are my 2 questions.
Thank you. Jack DePalma, we'll take you first.
Are you aware that Nissan Picture has joined, because you didn't ask him to answer the previous question?
I'm not aware that Nissan Picture has joined. Nissan, you're here?
Yes, I'm here. Nissan, hello, Nissan.
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me? Hello.
Yes.
Hello.
All right. Nissan, if you remember the previous question, we'll come back to you and give you a chance to do it. But let's go through on this question first. So, and then we'll include you in this. Jack DePalma, you're first.
Here's my 1-minute answer, Michael. No, I will not go to the rally, but as a retiree, my union just changed its mind about the Medicare Advantage. I don't control the union, but they sometimes, respect the vote. Let's hope. It's a big issue. I spent an hour talking to a colleague about this. But, there are other things going on in the real world. So right now I will not go to that, but I kind of don't want to give up my Medicare healthcare. I don't like the way the city's playing change the rules because of the retirees. I think that's what the question was. I'm not really sure.
And there was a cart about the election having a cart on the radio station and the debates being aired at a pristine time so that the listeners can hear it. We had that done last year, but for some
Oh, you're
reason
talking about the LSB election.
Yes.
So what's your specific issue about that?
It wasn't an issue, it was a question, which was asked upon
Could you
me.
repeat it? I didn't quite catch that. I'm sorry.
I asked that we have 2 more weeks before the election concludes.
All right.
What have you done, meaning the candidates, to get the debate advertised, i.e. having carts on the radio, on our radio station, and the debate to be aired at a popular time slot, not in the middle of the day, in the middle of the week.
I'm sorry, but I don't control that. The program director does. Thank you.
So thank you.
But what have you done to get that to manifest? If the program person does it and they're in.
Excuse me. This is not for. This is to ask questions. It's not to argue with the candidates. So I just want to keep it orderly. Also, it makes the timekeeping really impossible to be going back and forth between question and answer. So, I think we're done with Jack on that question. So, Tom Murata, you're next.
I would just like to agree that people should be made more aware in between the programs when these debates will happen, so they can be aware of it. I'm not aware of the previous ones, even though they're on the archives. So I do endorse and say, yes, this should be more advertised when the debates are going to be, so people can keep the time period out, so they can listen to them, or at least go home and hear them on the archives. So yeah, I don't have any control over it, but I definitely would like to see that more advertised, so people know when they were having them in the last 2 weeks.
Okay. Nissan Pitcher. And you're answering this question, and we'll come back to you if it's possible to get you to answer the last question.
Yeah, so what have I done? So I'm obviously new to the radio station as a whole and as a new candidate, but I've already have provided myself usefulness to many of the staff members and other people on the board here, as they could probably tell you later. But I have already dedicated my time to volunteer to help try to give new ideas and ways of advertisement and different ways of organizing as a political organizer myself. To help in my expertise, I've already agreed to help volunteer and organize for another person here, Jack DePalma, in the little group, which hopefully they'll set up phone banking and other stuff very shortly. A lot of stuff is still being built and stuff at the time. People go in, people go out as a volunteer organization. That's how things go. What I would like to do is bring in new people into the mix and help bring more power and more ways of doing things that we have in a more modern civil way. And as for what I did as a candidate, I was actually trying to organize a new event too. I was actually trying to organize my own forum, and been working with some of the the directors and stuff to try to see if it gets more advertised as well, like making sure it's on the website, making sure we have the lists and everything's correct on that. So that's what I've done. I think I've done a lot for being new here. But that's my opinion, and you could take that for what it's worth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Jim Dingman.
Well, thank you, Denise, for the question. Part of the reason we're doing this is that as far as I'm concerned, as somebody who advocated elections 30 years ago, the whole commitment to this process has essentially declined in the past 20, 25 years in the network. And so the reason why we wanted to have this opened up to everybody in the network is because a lot of stations around the country they just do pro forma with this issue of election debates. They just simply do what they're supposed to do, or they try to avoid it and they don't do anything, really. So this is one of the reasons why we want to open up to everybody around the country. So yeah, I will try to talk to Bob and Keziah this week and see if they can let people know about it. And, as I said, and what I sent out, if people want to have more of these, we'll do more of them before the election is finished. And I wasn't aware of this demonstration we're talking about, so you'd have to tell me more about it in terms of what's it about. But yeah, I'm someone who's on Medicare, so I'm very much concerned about this kind of questions. I fear that Trump is going to screw everybody on Medicare, Medicaid if he gets elected.
Thank you. James Sagerton.
Thank you. First, I want to say that debates and forums are not exactly the same thing. Debate is kind of a back and forth between fewer people, and a forum is where the same question gets everybody, and it's usually a larger number of people. It's a little less exciting. Somebody mentioned before about what should we have on the air to excite people. Debate is good radio. It's always good to have debate about issues and present more than one point of view on the radio. But what have I done personally to promote the election process is how I interpret one of the other questions. And when the election started, Keziah was a new interim program director. She didn't know the rules. I engaged with her individually, personally, through phone calls, and I provided her with the parts of the bylaws that mention the on-air presence of the candidates and how it should be done. They were initially intending not to have candidate carts, and I explained to her that people at WBAI had become accustomed to having candidate carts, even though they're not specifically mentioned in the bylaws. They were planning to do it just by the book, by the bylaws. I think I talked her into having the candidate carts because it was a tradition and people expected it, and there would be pushback if they didn't get it. And so I think I won't take full credit for it because I don't know the whole backstory, but I think I was influential in influencing management to go forward with candidate carts. And somebody mentioned that there were 3 candidate debates or forums on the air. And I don't know if they're replaying the same forum or if the person was mistaking the candidate carts for the forum. But I will just say management is generally not, they don't consider internal politics to be good radio. And, as the democratically governed only broadcast network in the world, we need to push back on that a little bit.
Thank you. Nassan, did you hear Mayat's question such that you can respond to it?
I heard the question, but I don't remember all of it, and there was a lot in there, so I'm not sure what to respond to.
Well,
So maybe give me like a shortened version of it.
We can move forward. If you didn't hear the question, I'm not going to do it a third time. But you're welcome to take a crack at any response that you want. Otherwise, we'll move forward.
Sure, I could take a crack at a response. Just give me 1 second.
We're holding for a second.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, sorry about that. Just I want my video come up. So what I think is most important is obviously getting new awareness in the different areas of networks using what's known as the network effect, as well as penetrating these different bubbles that people find themselves in the cyber realm, in the cyberspace, because now people have been bombarded with information and suffer what we call now information overload, and also the prelude of bots that come in on the internet. People have siphoned themselves into small little communities and siloed themselves in such a way where you get things like, like these echo chambers and other things. So so it's very important that we penetrate these different silos and slowly bring people from those places back into more general conversation And we could do that through, again, a new renaissance of radio. I'm seeing being radio as a fashionable thing again, just like back in the day where just like back in the day when vinyl was popular and now vinyl making a comeback. I feel radio can also make a comeback in the new golden age of radio. But to do that, we have to use the new modern tools we have today and the new modern strategies that are available. And we also forge ahead in creating our new model in radio as well to go along with that to be compatible. That's my answer. Thank you for the question. I hope I answered that the best of my ability.
Thank you very much. So I personally have a pretty juicy question lined up, but I think we're going to have to bring the evening to a close. And so we are planning to do some other events, and that might I'll take my question to that next event. We're going to close with, I think, one last question from one of the attendees, and this is a person without a telephone number. I think it may be Mario.
Hello?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. Oh, very good at recognizing my voice. It could be a quick statement. You know, great art is a reflection of our time in real time for all time. And you can't be universal when you're doing this. So BAI had a time where it synced with the government and the system and so radio and the information. It hasn't evolved. If you take since 2009, when Bertold started, the last 15 years, it hasn't moved its art form in real time. It's stuck. And it's trying to be universal, so it's trying to be all inclusive, but there's no real direction. Nobody can put their foot on it. And everybody thinks that that's the way to be. That's not true. If you go back and really examine a reflection of our time in real time for all time, it just hasn't moved, though. It was exactly that way for about 3 decades, 2 decades, and it hasn't moved. So, am I still on? I heard a click.
Still on.
Okay. All right. So real quick, first, I have a quick question for the chair. How many seats are up for election at this election?
This is an election. This is a standard election. This is 12 seats are up at WBAI and probably the rest of the LSBs. 9 of those, it's always 75% listener, and it's 25%.
No. How many seats are empty to be filled?
He just asked you.
So it's 12. So it's divide 75.
Oh, 12 seats. Okay. Okay, I got it. Okay.
9 listener and 3. So
got it.
Oh, all right. So in the sun picture,
well, what is the candidates going to do different that we haven't done, and why can't it just turn into action? There's been a lack of action.
Right.
That's maybe my final question.
I'm checking.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nissan.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad you asked about action because I'm all about action, not words. I'm telling you what I want to do. And what I want to do, being on the board of LSB, is to first create, if one doesn't already exist, because my understanding it doesn't, is a technical advisory board or committee. And I would head that. And what I want to do is take the action of helping you modernize and helping the station modernize in their tech field, updating their website, trying to get a new app out, trying to penetrate these new spaces, explain to them the newest models that are available today, not in terms of broadcasting, but also in terms of financing and, listener engagement and also really figure out a new analytical structure because apparently we keep poor track of logistics and, who's listening and the analytics. So I don't know why that is, but from my understanding, they don't have a clear understanding of who's listening or when or why. But we have simple solutions for those things, and I want to bring those to the forefront. And That's why I want to be on the LSB, because I think with my technical knowledge and my organizational background, I could get the ball rolling on actual actions. Thank you, and that's what I got to say.
Thank you very much. Tom Murata.
I want to agree with everything what Nissan just said. I think as the time goes on, the content has been getting better and better and better and better in all the public affairs programs. They're amazing. The idea is to get them into the ears of the younger audience that need us more now than BAI was needed by the Vietnam generation. Basically, I proposed, and one of the main reasons I want to be on the LSB is to get a team of retired professionals working with young interns that would come up with a plan to get our content into the ears of the younger people. That's not impossible. We're in the city where this is the center of the media capital of the world. We should be able to get our content into the ears of those people. Mario points out, yes, we're kind of stuck. The content is great. It's just getting our content into the ears of the younger people. We've got to do that with Nissan's technical background and people finding a way to get this pointed into the ears of those younger people. That is the way to go, and I think that would help get us unstuck, Mario. And we just have to, again, remember Black Seinfeld. They were on the radio and they made money, but somehow it wasn't shared with BAI, and I think that's why they were off. They made money through their podcast. Somehow we have to get programs that are popular into the ears of the younger people. We got to do that. That's the answer.
Thank you. Jack DePalma.
Michael, the previous question, I want to give you credit for organizing and working very hard to get Keziah Glow to put those carts on the air. Many people operated to organize, and they should get credit for it. And I believe part of what people miss, I guess, I don't remember who asked the question, but WBAI is a combination of do it yourself and make sure you do it by the rules, or somebody might, accuse you of something, or make sure you do it so that nobody accuses you of something, because they're going to accuse you of something even if you do it, according to the rules. So that whole thing, I remember, what was it, the beginning of June or July? It was really your efforts, Michael, that organized people. And I think Doug's right. I think factionalism sucks, man. But I don't know about what's going on in California, and I'm always on the side of action to save WBAI and to work for WBAI. Thank you, Nissan. We talked a couple of days ago. And Jim Dingman and James, thank you very much for giving this forum, Michael. And I would just tell Mario, Mario, if you believe in action and, reach into your pocket and send them $50 if you can. Maybe you can only send them $25.
That's not going to happen.
Yeah, well, that's the problem, Mario. We have people like you that are what do we call you, a freeloader or a gold?
All right.
No, I'm protesting.
Okay.
Oh, I'm a protester, Mario. I don't got $25 to get on the phone call.
Please, no debate with the questioners.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I don't want to insult Mario, but
James
$25, Mario.
You're next.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. Jack just beat me to it. I was going to answer some old business here. Someone early on in this conversation, I think it was Virginia, asked what they could do to help WBAI. In their case, they're in California, but what can anybody do? And the number one thing that people can do, which you might guess me as the former chair of the National Finance Committee, is make a donation. Please, everybody, dig deep. I know it's repetitive, but make a donation if you can. And I wanted to play a little catch up here. The FCC complaint, granted, there were some violations, they had to be dealt with, but that should have been done internally. And there was no excuse for going outside of the organization to cost us $25,000 with a petition that could have cost not only WBAI, but the whole network's licenses, opening up a process where you put all the licenses at risk. That was very foolhardy, very risky, not the way to go. As to action and what to do, I wanted to say something about the podcasting. Leonard Lopate gave WBAI Pacifica, the rights to his podcasts, unfettered. He gave unqualified rights to his podcast. He's about a year ago, he had over 1 million hits on his podcasts. And that's what we need to do, not bring on podcasters who have huge followings to add a few hundred people to their audience with WBAI listeners. It's to get WBAI's talent to make podcasts and get it out there to the major market.
Thank you. Jim Dingman, you get the last word as a candidate.
Well, Doug is of course right. It would be a lot better if people weren't spending energy battling away. Unfortunately, that's not been the case in my experience for the past several decades. I try to ignore it as much as I can, but sometimes one can't. The question of the form issue that Mario raises is a legitimate question, because we still have the 0.1% issue, whether people like it or not, and that is something that has to be changed. The most important issue that, as far as I'm concerned, the network has to face is its relevancy to the populace and the metro areas it exists in and the people of the United States and frankly the world. Too much is based on self-absorbed interest. That is, I have to be on the air because my message is so important that nobody else in the world can possibly fathom it. And I've seen that attitude for decades. That's the kind of bullshit that frankly is not productive and basically has led us into the sink financially. That has to change. And again, we always have the wonderful possibility of recreating ourselves in a positive way any day of the week we want. It's just a mental attitude that has to change about doing that. And that's what's so exciting about being in a situation like this, where you can actually say that, wow, the potential every day is to do something different and positive and do something that'll blow people's minds. That's what I'm into.
Thank you very much.
He actually answered my question.
All right. So thank you all. I want to say that the views expressed are those of the candidates, not of the radio station or the Pacifica Foundation. And the sponsorship of this forum is not an endorsement of any candidate. So I want to thank everyone. I want to thank all of the candidates who are here participating throughout the evening. I want to thank Eleanor Elizabeth Foreman for assisting with the timekeeping. I want to thank everyone who is here to listen. I want to thank those people who presented questions. I thought I had a pretty juicy question in the store that I could have asked tonight, but we're going to bring it to a close here. So come back, same time, same station, so to speak, next week. Again, next Sunday, 6 p.m., we will be using the same link information, so the same Zoom link or the same Zoom telephone numbers. This has been recording. So if you feel as a candidate that you want to share your performance here tonight, it will be available and you can distribute it to friends. And if you are otherwise a participant and think this was valuable and you want to share it with people, please do. That's sort of a partial answer to the question that one of the people asked. And by the way, not only this forum, but there have been at least two candidate forums that were broadcast on the air, and that means they're in the archives, and links are available. And as Daryl Pearson has often reminded people, the archives are valuable because you can share links in the archives, and that helps boost awareness of the station and what's going on here. So again, thank you all for participating. Look forward to seeing you next week, and all best.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night, everyone.
you.
I'd like to just
You can show your appreciation for my timekeeping by using me on the LSB meetings.